Friends, you're in for a very special guest on the Elite Educator. His name is Dr. David Kelly, and he has spent 20 years in secondary education, currently serving as principal of Nixa High School in Missouri. Under his leadership, the school earned the prestigious Missouri Gold Star and National Blue Ribbon distinction. A dedicated mentor to his administrators, he is passionate about developing teachers and fostering a school climate where students maximize their potential. Welcome, David.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, tell me a little bit about your journey, about how you got into education.
So I'll give you the short version, but it actually, my mom was an educator. I always felt that that was a calling for me, but it was one that I strongly resisted. So I went to college to be an accountant. I ran into my high school principal between my sophomore and junior year, and he asked me what I was going into, and I told him accounting, and he said, "That's the boringest thing I've ever heard." And he said, "You should not do that." And anyways, we had about a 30-minute conversation. But after that conversation actually led me that fall to go back to school. And I went and found my academic advisor, and I said, "I'm changing my major to education." And it has been the best decision I ever made. I really I have a heart for students. I have a heart to see students succeed. And I do believe at my heart, I really try to be a servant leader. And it just fits me. And it fills my bucket.
So how do you define a strong school culture, and how do you intentionally shape it at Nixa High School?
So the first thing that we talk about when we talk about school culture is I want, as a building leader, I want our teachers, when they walk into our building, I want our teachers to enjoy coming to work every day. So the job we do is very serious, and we understand that. And we also understand the metrics that we're trying to reach, but we also understand that work is much more enjoyable. If you like your colleagues, if you like to have fun. So that's a focus of mine. We have things, every month we actually have a team that we call the theme team. So they create a theme every year, and that becomes our theme for the entire year. And then each month we have a celebration centered around that theme.
For this year? What's your theme for this year?
So we are the Eagles at Nixa, so that is our mascot. And this year we went with the theme "Soaring Together." And so they just felt like our building, we have 120 staff members in our building. There's 2,000 students. So it's a large high school, especially for our area. In fact, it's the largest high school in our area. And so one thing that they talked about is that they felt like we were becoming more and more departmentalized. And so we wanted to create a sense of togetherness amongst all the different departments at the high school. And so we came up with the theme "Soaring Together," and really focused on togetherness amongst our faculty.
That's a beautiful theme, and you can see that in kids' minds, and parents and teachers' minds. That would certainly be a calling for them.
Yes, absolutely. And we have our vision for the high school, and it's been the vision since I took over. We went through a whole process when I became principal to rewrite our vision. But our vision has been empowering student success. And at Nixa, what that means is each student and their family, along with counselor, they are going to define a success criteria, and then we're going to work together to ensure that student is able to reach that success criteria. And really, the success criteria all boils down to 4 different elements. A kid's either going to go to a 4-year college, they're going to go to a trade or technical school, they're going to go straight to the workforce, or they're going to go to the military. And our job is to make sure that they have the skills and attributes to be successful in whatever they have determined their success criteria to be.
Wow. And you have, I'm sure, designed different routes for different students.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have students who are going to go on to be lawyers and doctors, and we have courses that ensure they have those prerequisite skills, so that then when they walk into onto a college campus in the fall after they graduate from Nixa High School, they're ready to go. We've actually spent some time with post secondary institutions in our area and around the state to ensure that our students have those skills, because a lot of times one thing we have noticed when we talk to those people is there's a certain set of academic skills they're looking for, but there's also a certain set of soft skills that they say are really lacking. So not only do we teach them about the academic side, but with that we try to infuse in some soft skills as well.
Now, I'm going to broach on something that you're very proud of. Nixa High School has received the prestigious accolades under your leadership, namely the Missouri Gold Star and National Blue Ribbon Awards. What key initiatives or cultural shifts do you believe were instrumental in earning these honors?
So I think one thing that was instrumental is our students. Obviously, we have great kids, and I tell everybody that our kids are awesome.
You mean
They come.
they're not awful like a lot of people say of this generation? Of course I'm kidding,
No,
but I just have to
I know you
blare
are.
that out here.
And every time I hear somebody say that, I say, come to Nixa High School, come spend a day with me. You will leave inspired, and you will leave with a great hope for future generations. I really believe that our kids exemplify that every day. We really raised our academic standard. We were one of the best schools in the area, but we were not one of the best schools in the state of Missouri. To be completely honest, not and Southwest Missouri education's good, but we wanted to be great, and I really did challenge our staff. We're good for Southwest Missouri, but what if we're great for the state of Missouri? And we talked a lot about Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and I used a lot of information from that book just to create that idea of sometimes you have to create change and create a need for change, because we were good for our area, but I started comparing us to the rest of the state and said, guys, we can be this good too. And that led to an increase in test scores on most of our assessments and almost all academic areas. It led to an increase on our ACT score. And those results were recognized by the state of Missouri with the Gold Star, which led us to be nominated to be nominated for a National Blue Ribbon. And there were 200 schools across the United States, K-12, that were all recognized as National Blue Ribbon schools. It's a neat event that the U.S. Department of Education puts together every year, and we were blessed to be one of those schools in 2020.
So how do you align staff, students, and stakeholders around this shared vision?
So they create the vision with us. We didn't create that vision on our own. We worked with stakeholders. One thing we did that I think was really powerful is we brought in some parents whose kids had graduated and moved on, and we brought those parents on board in that process. We brought former students in, we brought current students in, and we brought together teachers and administrators and really developed that vision together. And there were about 40 to 50 people that worked on that and came up with just a really good comprehensive building improvement plan. And because of the involvement that we had in the process, it naturally led itself to buy-in. And so once we had them bought in, I mean, it honestly, a lot of the work takes care of itself. And teachers were energized by the work. Most people, I think they like to live in the status quo because then they like to live in their comfort zone. But man, it's so much more rewarding when you get pushed out of that comfort zone, and then you get to see the successes of your work. And in our job, those successes are truly change lives. I believe there is no greater tool for upward mobility in our society than public education. And each and every day we work hard to make sure that our students can be all that they want to be.
Yeah, when I speak at schools, I speak on success is the other side of fear. And I talk about the 4-minute mile being broken and how that was something that was thought to be impossible, and how people literally thought the body would die when somebody would have it. Now it's been broken 1,800 times, including by high school students.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we all just need that little nudge in our life to push us a little farther than what we think we can do. And I am very fortunate. So if you would have told me 20 years ago I'd have my doctorate, I would have honestly laughed at you. But I've seen it work in my own life, and I honestly have to thank my wife for really being a motivator in my life to push me to really do more and be more than I personally thought I ever could be.
Okay, with that, we're going to pause for a commercial message. But friends, come right back, because Dr. David Kelly, who has spent 20 years in education, is going to tell us so much more about how you can make your school, your students, your educators better. Friends, I have Dr. David Kelly with me, who has spent 20 years in secondary education, currently serving as principal of Nixa High School in Missouri. Under his leadership, the school earned a Missouri Gold Star and a National Blue Ribbon distinction. Here's another big question for you, sir. You mentor new administrators through the Missouri Leadership Development System. What core advice or mindset do you emphasize for those stepping into school leadership roles for the first time?
So I'm a big believer in a growth mindset, and I'm a big believer in being a lifelong learner. But I also am a big believer in being humble and recognizing that we don't know it all. And that's the biggest thing I think for a brand new administrator to understand is you need to really know who you are as a person. You need to be able to really identify your strengths and weaknesses. And you need to humble yourself in those areas of weakness and try to either grow. And if you can't grow in that area, find some people around you that will fill that void and be able to do the things that you maybe aren't your strength. So if you're not a visionary leader, find that person that's going to be a visionary and help dream big. If you're and maybe task analysis isn't a great thing. Maybe you have the vision, but you're not going to be the right one to get people on board with that vision, or you're not going to have the ability to organize the appropriate steps to get there. Find the person that's really task oriented, get them on your team, get them on your side. And the whole idea that two heads are smarter than one is so true. I often look around a room and I really don't think I've never been in a room where I thought I was the smartest guy sitting there. But I am a guy that we're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to figure it out and we'll get there together.
So with experience across multiple districts, how have you seen secondary education evolve over the last 2 decades?
So it's funny you ask that. So we used to in the United States when I was going through school. There was all these talks about 21st century skills. And the idea was, what are the skills that our kids are going to need to be successful in the 21st century? And the funny thing is a lot of schools just rebranded that and they quit calling them 21st century skills, but are still chasing the same things. But really, I think one of the biggest changes is it is incredibly important for our kids to understand how the content that they are learning in a class applies in real world scenarios. So a kid may be sitting in an algebra 1 class learning about slope, but it's great that they learn about slope, but how's that going to ever apply in the real world? And so creating real world application, we have a geometry class, and we were putting planting some trees, and we used had the geometry class go out there, and they did the research to figure out how tall the trees are going to get when they're mature trees, and then we had them use math to identify what the fall zone would look like to make sure that we didn't plant the trees so close to each other that they would fall on each other. It should, but just, I mean, trying to come up with real world examples is so important, because really today in a lot of those situations, it's not necessarily about the content they're learning. It's about how are they critically thinking, and using skills that they're learning and applying them to real world situations. Historically, it was a lot of just memorize the definitions, memorize this formula. But right now, kids don't really connect to that, because they have this great thing called the internet. Now we have this thing called AI that is completely transforming a lot of areas of life. And so our job really, when AI first came on, there's a lot of schools around us that their first response to AI was, we need to ban this. How do we go about banning AI? And ours was, hey, AI is not going away. How can we leverage that to give our students an advantage over other students in our area? And that really is our focus. And we cannot keep up with the pace of change, but we can prepare students who are adaptable to those changes. And that adaptability, I really believe, is what's going to lead to long-term success in those students' careers.
So what drives you in your passion for education every day?
It's the future. It's giving back to kids. It's giving back to the community, and I think it's what drives me a lot is every year at graduation, and I see those kids walk across the stage, and I know. Every year at graduation, I sit there and I'm like, man, the future is bright. The future is bright, because we are graduating kids who are ready to take on the world. Overall, there's a story that I will share with you of my first year in teaching, of a kid who, this student had nothing going for them, had parents who were not involved, had parents who did not want, if he wanted to play sports, in the United States, sports in schools, it's a big deal. So he wanted to play sports. His parents said, that's fine. If you want to play sports, you can, but you're going to be walking to school or walking home after practice. This kid lived, it was almost 20 miles from the school. And that kid, we did not know for the first couple of weeks he was walking home, but we arranged a ride for that kid. We found out one weekend that he wasn't getting appropriate nutrition. His family had ran out of food, ran out of money over the weekend, and he hadn't had anything to eat all weekend. We got him on our backpack program. And that kid today is just living a completely different life than what he grew up in. And it's all because he stayed in school, he got an education, and he had a group of educators surround him and support him. And just seeing that early in my career and the impact that an educator can have on students, it really has lasted 20 years and is going to last quite a few more, because I do see the difference makers that educators are. And I tell our teachers, especially our young teachers, all the time, as a young educator, a lot of times you don't see the fruits of your labor until years later. So I'll be in Walmart and I'll see a kid that was honestly a knucklehead in school, and I'll see that kid in Walmart and they'll come up and say, hey, Dr. Kelly, how are you? And you get to catch up with them, and they matured and they are a functioning member of society. And that, just seeing that, it just gives me a ton of it fills my bucket and just keeps me going each and every day.
two core skills are positivity and resilience. How do you model that in your students?
So when you ask about modeling, like positivity, I mean, I growing up around my mom, she was one of the most positive people that I ever met. And it was always just small words of encouragement, small words of appreciation, um, telling me she was proud of me, those types of things. And I just try to echo that when I deal with kids, even when they're struggling with something, to try to see the positive side in all things. There are kids who they've never had any adult speak life into them, and I think anytime we interact with kids, we try to do that. And hope that they walk away from that conversation feeling a little bit better about themselves. And the flip side of that is the resiliency piece. When we talk about building resiliency in kids, especially, they have to have a positive mindset and know that there's always two different outcomes for every situation or more. And one of those is going to lead to positive results, and one of those is going to lead ultimately to negative results. And if they can have some of those successes where they've had a situation that's hard and they've worked through that situation, if we support them through that in the right way, they're going to lean towards that positivity, and through that process they're going to build resiliency.
If you could implement one bold change across all high schools in America tomorrow, what would that be and why?
This isn't that bold, but it is something that I believe in. And it's hard to do because you got to find community support. Every kid needs to have an internship in high school, where and I know that that might not sound that bold, but they need to get out and see what the real world is like, especially when they're in high school. Whether that's something they want to do, whether that's something they aren't interested in, or maybe something they just think they're interested in, just to get out there and see there's a whole nother world out there that a lot of times our K-12 system doesn't necessarily expose those students to. So getting them out there, I would love to, if you could create a course, and it would cost a ton of money, but if you could create a course where a job exploration course where kids learned about different career fields and then had a chance to go out and experience each of those career fields for a day, I think it'd be a huge game changer for most kids, because they would see and experience the why behind the work they're doing. Right now, a lot of times they don't have the ability to actually see what that would look like. And you got to create that vision sometimes for that kid. And I think nothing would do that better than actually getting them out into the workforce.
So what's one traditional practice in education that you believe we should leave behind?
Oh, man, that's a good question. A traditional practice in education. Man,
I caught you in left field.
you did. I wasn't expecting that one. I think it's a great question. But I think
when I was a kid, I'll tell you what. So when I was a kid, we used to fear the principal's office. The principal had the strap, and rumors of the strap greatly exceeded the reality. That corporal punishment needed to be left behind.
Yes, and I would say that I definitely agree with that. One thing that we've really tried to do, and it's funny you say that, because the idea of the principal is still somewhat, there's a lot of kids who have a negative connotation to that, and I really think it dates back to those days.
Well, when I used to be called to the principal's office, it was something that shook me to the core.
Yeah. Yeah. So we don't use that tool anymore. And that's probably a good thing.
Well, and it should be, because really the principal is really a person that is there to help you, not harm you. And bringing that fear of God into students is not a good thing.
No, and I do believe the role of the principal has shifted a lot over the last 20 years. the principalship, when I went through my master's program, was really training you to be a manager, and not so much a leader. And that is one thing that I have definitely seen shift over time in my role as an administrator, is we are definitely raising leaders and not just managers. And there's a big difference in those two.
So, David, how can people find out more about you and what your school has to offer?
So honestly, our school website, nixapublicschools.net, is a great place to go to find out about some of the stuff that we're doing. I am on Facebook. I am on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn, and those are great places to connect. If you look up David Kelly Nixa, you'll find all sorts of information about me, and I'd be happy to connect with any of your listeners. I am passionate about education, but I also, in conversations where people have reached out to me, I'm always amazed in how much I learn in that conversation, even when they're seeking something from me.
David, thank you so much for giving this time to the Elite Educator, because I know you're going to push everybody to another higher level that you've achieved.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. And friends, make sure you come back for every episode of this show, because it'll give you the tips and techniques to take you, your school, your teachers to the next level. Bye for now and have a fantastic day.